To be the main leader of the largest amphibious operation ever attempted, Dwight D. Eisenhower had to communicate with hundreds of people daily and learn to navigate the best course of action. He displayed the characteristics of a man who believed in teamwork, listening, composing, and coordination. The imperative Operation Overlord, now called DDay, on June 6, 1944 during World War II, to succeed at a task of this magnitude where multiple countries, numerous branches of government, and thousands of lives were at stake. Someone who had exceedingly good communication skills was paramount to the Allied war effort. It was this defining moment because there was no backup plan, and this day would be the turning point for the future of the war. Eisenhower came from a modest family in Aberdeen, Kansas. His family held value in religion, working hard, and always trying your best. It was often stated that this was his good old-fashioned Kansas roots. Dwight began a military career at West Point, where he learned how to follow orders, work hard, and put in his full potential in whatever task was assigned to him. His early military assignments included the 1919 Transcontinental Mortar Convoy, training soldiers at the Tank Corps for World War I, and riding the official American history battle of the Monuments in World War I. He would work with legendary military figures like General Pershing and Fox Connor. It was working with these diverse men that Eisenhower learned how to do good and bad communication styles. He would develop his interpersonal skills that would be the foundation of how he communicated with future military and non-military people. Little did he know by this, he would apply these skills with a sudden act of aggression against Japan in the U.S. The bombing of Pearl Harbor in Hawaii thrust the U.S. to now be an active participant in World War II. Army Chief of Staff General George C. Marshall knew of Eisenhower's stern reputation as a man who worked hard, listened, and was smart. With military strategies, he summoned Eisenhower for a test on how to proceed in the war. It would prove to Marshall he was the man for the job, and was set in motion. Eisenhower's rising ranks as a reliable leader of the Allies, Marshall described him as he was mentally alert, ideas coming to his head so rapidly words would tumble out. Most of all, he executed self-confidence. He was good at his job, and he knew it. And he knew that his supervisors realized it. He expected to be called to challenging posts and to make a major contribution to the Army and nation.
To proceed with war plans, the top two men of the Allies, President Franklin Roosevelt and American Prime Minister Winston Churchill and Great Britain, would have to communicate and work together to make a stand against the Germans. They would confer with their top generals as to where to attack the Axis power. General Eisenhower believed in attacking France since it had fallen to Germany in June 1940. This did not go well as there were too many dominant personalities and little compromise. Needless to say, it was lack of communication at the highest level. Nothing could be achieved unless someone could bring these two powerful nations together. Lots of discussion took place on who would be chosen. General George C. Marshall, who served in World War I, that there must be one man in command of the entire theater, air, ground, and ships. If we can make a plan for unified command now, it will solve 9/10 of our troubles. He had seen firsthand how confusing and frustrating it was to have multiple people in charge, all with their own agendas and ideas. An American would be chosen to lead since they are providing most of the resources and manpower. It was not in his future because Marshall was also the only one who could positively communicate with President Roosevelt, as he had the tendency to thrust himself into the middle of the situation, give it a casual study, and then order this or that action. An interface in the middle of the situation meant the end of the operation. With Marshall out, discussions between Prime Minister Winston Churchill and President Roosevelt began. They looked to Dwight Eisenhower, who was a gamble because he had no major accomplishments other than an effective staff officer, but everyone liked because of this sunny disposition. He was also the only one who could communicate effectively and handle the extreme egocentric personalities of the American General Patton and British Army officer Bernard Montgomery. Eisenhower was now the Allied commander, and the next phase would require where to attack the Axis powers. Communication between the two nations was rocky at best in the beginning of the war, especially with two dominant, non-negotiating personalities, Prime Minister Churchill and President Roosevelt. Eisenhower believed in directly attacking Germany and France, but Churchill disagreed and said, with control of the Mediterranean, North Africa could then be the gateway to Europe, and then engagement of the Allies with German troops. At the Acadia Conference 162, Eisenhower communicated his belief but listened to Churchill and moved towards Operation Torch in North Africa. Here he would have to prove what kind of leader he was and had to communicate with British and American generals for the success of the mission. Critiques began, and Eisenhower wrote to his son, "It is easy enough for a man to be a newspaper hero one day and a bum the next." He added that a soldier had to do his duty, and he saw it. and not be too much disturbed by popularity or newspaper acclaim. Ambrose 130. A key trait that Eisenhower learned early on was to listen to people, think about it, and then come to a decision. He used this with the open communication between his generals where they felt they could speak freely, tell him their thoughts, and he valued their opinions. This was not normal with men in his position as an Allied commander.
Historian Stephen Ambrose describes his key communication skills. Eisenhower ran an efficient office and he knew how his staff should function. He emphasized the positive. He preferred to praise and encourage, to give him any task and then leave him alone, resisting the temptation to look over his shoulder or to guide him to the correct solution. When the work was well done, he saw to that man that he got credit for his accomplishment. There were some moments of failure where the communication became entangled in North Africa, but Eisenhower learned from his mistakes and was chosen to lead again as the Allied commander to invade Sicily and then Italy. What made Eisenhower unique and a good commander during this operation was his coordination, his ability to deal with problems, listen to his generals' opinions, and communicate what needed to be done. He had earned their trust, their respect, the goodwill of Churchill and Roosevelt, as well as the British and American military leaders who worked with him. He was popular with the troops, to whose personal review he devoted much time and attention. The success of Torch, Eisenhower was now elected by FDR and Churchill to lead the Allies and gain the title Supreme Allied Commander at the Tehran Conference. It was decided it was time to invade France, so he was sent to London to set up shape. The officers took family pride in the organization and were absolutely devoted to the Supreme Commander, whose demeanor was in confidence set the whole tone for the establishment. The level of the invasion of DDay was unprecedented. Operation Overlord would be the largest amphibious landing in history, with the logistics so complex as to defy comprehension.
You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world.
But General Montgomery was he was special. He was conceited that his plan was the best no matter what it was. Well, Eisenhower had another general, which if y'all know Patton, or if you've had a chance to study Patton, he was just like Montgomery. He was bullheaded and stubborn of my way's the best way. So you have two generals, two different countries trying to figure out the best way to do this. Eisenhower was able to negotiate those. Well, the problem is Hitler had a very bad temper, and most people did not want to confront him about certain things. So it was basically hours and hours after the invasion actually started where Rommel actually realized this was the real invasion, but they were afraid to go wake up Hitler. He was taking a nap.
You know, if you have to think of the number one characteristic that he had, he was a team player.
Eisenhower would prove to be a successful leader in World War II through his communication skills of compromising and teamwork. He would continue to lead the Allies through the end of the war when Germany finally surrendered in May 1945. Eisenhower would not fade from history but continue to shine. Ike would turn from the soldier to the next chapter of his life, Ike the statesman. He would eventually run for president in 1952 and was elected for 2 terms. During his presidential years, he would use his communication skills he developed in the military to deal with controversial issues. He kept calm in Cold War tensions, he negotiated with an armistice in the Korean War, and he took actions against racial segregation in Little Rock, Arkansas. The communication skills he learned in the military would carry over his entire life